I used to use an iPhone 6 Plus. When I had it, when I got it, it was the best of the best. It was the best iPhone that was available at the time. However, this time round, I've upgraded to the iPhone 8 Plus. I haven't gone with the 10. And really, the main reason for that is the 10 doesn't offer me anything for the extra money that I feel is worthwhile. The screen is nice, but it's not amazing. Face ID is not something that I'm terribly interested in. And emojis, well, I can imagine that's going to be coming to this device at some point. And to be honest, who cares about an emoji? I've said it in a previous video. They're just not something that I, in my point in my life, care about. And that's kind of the key thing about this video, is that I'm talking about this from someone who uses a phone every day, and I use it for so much stuff, but it is all pretty practical stuff. I don't play games on my phone. You know, I'm not that kind of person. I'm not the sort of person who's just sort of I'm not in your sort of like 18 to 30 age range where the usage of a phone and the need to have the latest version, always the latest version because it's the fashionable thing to have, is not something where I sit. But I get an opportunity with my work to upgrade my phone every 2 years, and I went for the 8 Plus. So what have I noticed above all else that is absolutely worth it if you are thinking about upgrading to the 8 Plus from 6 Plus? Firstly, speed. The chip inside this thing is the same chip as inside the 10. It's the A11 Bionic, and it is amazingly quick. Compared to the 6 Plus, it's just leagues above it. But really, that is such a noticeable thing when you change phone. If you go back to using a 6 Plus now, you really notice that difference. And just scrolling through apps and just on the App Store when you're updating stuff, the speed at which it updates things, you're not having to sit there waiting for that circle to go around, silly little things like that. But of course it goes into everything. Videos render quickly on it, games play better on it because the graphics processor, the graphics part of the CPU is just incredible as well on this device. So yeah, speed. If you're finding your phone is getting a little bit laggy, which the 6 Plus is starting to get to that point now, the speed increase that you get from using an 8 Plus is well worth it. Secondly, this is waterproof. Now that came last year. They started making the iPhone waterproof back when it was the 7 and back when they ditched the headphone socket. I'll get back onto that one in a minute. But they've continued it in this, and it's really handy. It's just a bit of peace of mind. It's not essential. I don't use my phone in water most of the time, but there's been quite a few occasions already when I've been kind of just sending a message, walking along the street, it's been raining, my phone's been getting wet, and I don't care about it because it's sealed and it's a waterproof device. That's a big deal as far as I'm concerned. The Touch ID on this is much better. It's so much quicker. There's no longer an actual physical button on the device. If you turn the phone off, it's kind of weird actually, because you push on the button and there is no physical movement to the button at all. However, it sends a sort of haptic motion through the button when you press it, so it feels as if you're pressing the button, and it works brilliantly. It unlocks it much quicker. I mean, it wasn't slow anyway. The 6 isn't slow, but once you've started using this, you do get to like the fact that the Touch ID is a bit more responsive. It's faster to unlock the phone, a bit more kind of reliable when your fingers aren't, when you've just come out of the bath or something like that. Bit of a weird one, but yeah, your fingers are different when you've just come out of a bath. Space on the device. Now, a lot of people talk about upgrading their iCloud and backing everything up to iCloud. And they say, well, why do you need to get a phone that has 256 gigabytes on it? Well, I'm not always going to be in a location where I'm able to back something up. I want to have space available on my device if I need it. I bought the highest space version of the 6 Plus, so I have a 128 gig 6 Plus, and I do not regret that now, because now I'm coming to the point where I'm selling that device. It seems like a very normal, good amount in 2017. you know, the phone itself is from sort of 2014, 2015. 128 gig was quite excessive at that time. That's just the way I choose to do it. Whether you just back everything up, well, maybe you do, and you only need a very small amount of space on your device. But for me, if I'm going to shoot a 4K video on the phone, if I'm just going to shoot video at all and store some, you know, so a lot of the time I will transfer video from this camera or from one of my other cameras and store the video file on my phone, so I can maybe show it to someone later, or I can transfer it to someone later, or convert it. And being able to store video files that are 10, 15 gigabyte easily on this device is great. The speaker. Now, compared to an iPhone 6 Plus, this now has 2 speakers. I think they had that last year as well. But so you have stereo speakers, you have a speaker here at the end, and you have a speaker here too. That's actually really good. It works very well. This one doesn't work quite the same as this. The two aren't perfectly balanced, but it doesn't matter, because the extra imaging you get from that, the fact that it's stereo for a start, is a big plus for, you know, for me. And it's a small thing, but if you have children and they're using these devices, a lot of the time they will hold the phone like this and they will block their hand over that, and it'll suddenly go quiet and they won't know why. And with this device, the sound still comes out of there, and so you're not left with, you know, your child whinging because you've dumped them in front of the iPhone to get yourself half an hour's peace and the sound's gone off. So that's a good one. Battery life is good, but then I kind of would expect it to be. It's a brand new phone, it's a brand new battery, everything is sort of optimized, and it's probably just the fact that the battery's at the start of its life that it's good. But the battery life is good, I can't complain about that. And the video upgrade, I don't actually use video on this phone that much, but there are big video upgrades coming from the 6 Plus to the 8 Plus. You now, of course, have 4K video, which you may choose to shoot with, but the amount of space it takes up, the quality is okay, but you're still talking about tiny sensors in these, and it's not amazing. And you can shoot 1080p slow-mo. That's nice, much better quality than the previous one, which was sort of something upscaled. I think it was only 720p and it was upscaled, but you can still shoot slow-mo on the 6 Plus. But this is much better quality slow-mo. You've got the additional video codecs and the JPEG codecs. They now support is it HEIF? Is that right? Is that an H.265 as well? So it supports those two types of codecs. And there was one other point on video. Oh, stabilization. Yeah, stabilization is better on this. If you're doing a sort of 1080p video and you can visibly see the better stabilization. It's not as good as the 10 actually. That is one of the points to have on the 10, is that stabilization is a little bit better than the 8 Plus. So what's bad about the phone? What's kind of disappointed me that I've, or maybe that I was expecting something a little bit better? Firstly, the camera. The camera's, it's okay, but I see the photos that, because my partner now has my 6 Plus, she's had my 6 Plus for ages actually, and the photos that she takes on it are just as good as the photos that I take on this. You know, the type of stuff I take on a phone, I'm only sharing it on WhatsApp or on Messenger or something, so I'm just not too worried about the quality of it. It's good enough on this, and it's good enough on the 6 Plus, but realistically, they're not that much better. The portrait mode, now this of course has the dual camera, and the 7 had the dual camera as well, the 7 Plus had the dual camera. The portrait mode is crap. It's absolutely rubbish. If you come from using a DSLR and you don't, I mean, I'm not trying to pixel peep or anything here, but the job that it does in just situations where you would expect to get a good result is useless. It looks nice in some pictures as long as you don't get in any way close to the image and you're only looking at it like that, but it's really nowhere near as good as I thought it would be. I thought because it was released on the iPhone 7 Plus, they would have had the chance to perfect it over the various iterations of iOS, and particularly as we're now on 11.2.1, we've had many, many versions since it came out, but the portrait mode on the iPhone, definitely nothing to write home about. It's really not that exciting, and I was kind of expecting it to be a little bit better than it is. I'm not a big fan of the glass. You know, oh, I forgot to mention wireless charging, of course. I don't use wireless charging. I have no real need for it. I've felt no reason to not need, you know, I can just plug a cable in the bottom. I'm okay with that, you know, but this does support wireless charging. But the glass, I'm not a massive fan of it. It gets incredibly dirty. I don't think you can probably see on there, but you can kind of see the marks on there. But and it's also can be extremely slippy. Sometimes it's, you know, if your fingers are in the kind of okay, it can be quite grippy, the glass, but sometimes it's incredibly slippy, and I'm just not a big fan of that feel. Whenever I go back to the 6 now, the metal case, I just prefer the look and I prefer the feel of it. Simple as that. All right, so what was I surprised by? Well, I think really the only thing, and it's a big one, it was such a big deal at the time. The biggest one is the headphone socket. The lack of the headphone socket has not bothered me in the slightest. I've been using wireless headphones now for about a year and a half, and I kind of just thought, well, sometimes at night time I do use wired headphones because they're the earbud types, and I just sort of plug them in and lie and have one in my ear. And I thought, but what if I need to charge while I'm doing that? Yeah, that has cropped up once or twice, but it's really not that big a deal. That's the way phones are going, because that physical jack is just way too, the physical socket, should I say, is way too big for a device like this these days. I'm sure Apple have got all their other reasons for doing it as well. But to be honest, it's not that big a deal. It really isn't. I just thought it would be, and I'm surprised that it just hasn't been at all. So there we go, just a few points on upgrading from the 6 Plus, my experience after using this phone for about 2 months, upgrading from the 6 Plus to the 8 Plus. So if you are thinking about doing that, of course, you may be someone who wants to and needs to and has some reason to go for the 10. But if you are looking to maybe save a bit and keep the same form factor as the 6 Plus, because of course this is identical, apart from the cameras on the back, so you may have to watch, you know, this fits in my old case, but the cameras don't quite sort of line up properly. But if you like that form factor, if you like the slightly larger display, not technically large, you know, it's physically bigger, but yes, I know the 10 is kind of stretched out and stuff. If you're not a fan of the notch, if you don't want to pay the extra however many hundreds of pounds, and you just don't feel the need to be desperately having that latest and greatest phone, it's a good device. I like it.